A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are here today to discuss how technology is rapidly transforming the education sector and what the future of this industry looks like. According to the World Economic Forum, the online education marketplace is projected to reach $350 billion by 2025. That only means one thing: there is a massive digital revolution that's underway. As we continue to level up our edtech game, what we need to know is how can we create a cost-effective and engaging learning environment for our students, for teachers, and for parents. Also, it's also important to realize that how can we bridge the digital divide that exists in education today, and how can we go ahead and make online learning a reality for all. I'm Meghna Sarkar, and today I'm joined by some important thought leaders from the field of education who are going to tell us all about it. It's my pleasure to invite and introduce our panelists for today's session, starting with Dr. Anup K. Singh, who's the Director General at Institute of Management, Nirma University, Dr. R.P. Kaushik, Chairperson at ICFAI University, Professor V.N. Rajasekharan Pillai, Vice-Chancellor, Somaiya Vidyavihar University, Dr. M. Vijayakumar, Vice-Chancellor, Yenepoya, Professor Nathan Subramanian, Director, Institute of Public Enterprise, and Mukesh Nihalwani, Sales Head, Private Education at Lenovo, India. Thanks to all of you for joining us today. Such a pleasure to have you with us today. So without further ado, I would like to jump right into the discussion. My first question is for Dr. Singh. Last year, with the pandemic, all educational institutions, they were forced to switch to online classes. So for you, sir, what do you think were the major learnings from that?
Well, thank you, Meghna. The first learning was that we have to change our mindset. We were operating in one kind of educational environment which suddenly became non-available, and we had to move into another educational environment. So the first challenge was how to change mindset of the administrators, teachers, and students. The second challenge was how to get technology. For example, how to get online LMS, how to get right kind of video conferencing app, and how to get right kind of assessment system. So we worked on all three kind of technologies. So that was the second challenge. And the third and most important challenge was how to engage students. Students were facing all kind of problems. Firstly, they were bored, they were challenged, and they were not engaged. So the most important challenge was that how to engage students. So what we did, that we started with the training program of students so that they understand that what is the reality and how they need to change their behavior now. And most importantly, we held two kind of classes. One was a large class which would have 60 to 80 students, and one was tutorial where we would have around 20 to 25 students. So we motivated students through tutorial, and we gave information through large classes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. That really helped starting off the discussion, understanding the challenges that the students are facing. But in spite of what you mentioned, I think we do understand that e-learning is the new normal. And though there are several shortcomings that need to be taken care of, there are also at least number of benefits that we can expect from the system. So my next question is for Dr. Vijayakumar. So if you can tell us what are the benefits that we can, expect from e-learning when it comes to both teachers and students.
Good evening, and thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of it. Thank you. Coming to the question, benefits are, as we said, we learned a lot, but by participating in our learning and teaching process, even without being physically present. This is the first thing we learned. because otherwise we were thinking that the classroom means conventionally you have to stand there, you talk, then only they will listen. In fact, that is the idea which we all used to have. Now it is totally changed thanks to COVID pandemic, I would say. That is the first thing we did. And that is the biggest benefit we got. The second thing is we used to think that suppose a person is absent, now he is going to lose his learning. But again, that is the benefit I have now, that our materials there are available for the student who could not, for some good reason, not able to attend. It is always there, and he can use that. He can use it any number of times. That's the second thing. The benefit, the third benefit, what I would see is repetition. He can keep on reviewing. If he is a student, he is not understanding what I have spoken once, he can go back and see again and again till he gets clarified with that issue. Otherwise, it is impossible for him to approach the teacher to again repeat the same thing. So he need not now approach the teacher. Instead, he approach the system which is already in his hand. So that is the next very good benefit I feel he can get it out of us. Instead of we going back and reviewing the books, now we can review our own teaching and learning process every time. That is the maximum, I would say, the benefit the student has derived. As far as the teacher is concerned, if you ask me, the benefit is I can address at a time any number of students. That is, we used Google platform, we used Zoom, now we are using Microsoft. Everywhere, the number is not an issue. So at a time, I can talk to so many. And in the different streams also, I can talk, if the curriculum or the syllabus is the same, I can talk to different stream of people talking only once. So I need not repeat the same thing to different sets of people, different classes. Instead, one class, I can make everybody listen to me from different streams. Most importantly, we can go out of the campus, meaning I can bring in the best of the teachers to come and take class for our students from sitting in their own houses, in their own places. That is made possible by this online and digital classes, because they need not be brought physically to do that. They have to spend only an hour, for example. They will be able to do that and help our students learn. The best minds, best brains can be used without coming to our campus and help our students get the best. This is what I feel is the benefit which we got from this.
Thank you, Dr. Vijayakumar. That was very insightful. But from what I understand, for us to actually reap all these benefits, the first and major problem that we are encountering is the digital divide. As per a recent survey, more than 50% students in India, they do not have access to the internet, which is obviously a huge problem for us to solve right away. So my next question is for Professor Nathan Subramanian. Sir, if you could please tell us as to how do we go about bridging this digital divide? Where do we start? What kind of strategies do you think should be implemented?
Sure. Firstly, thank you for having me on the panel, and very good afternoon to all of you, including to my fellow panelists. It's an honor to be able to interact with all of you. So I think there's a few things. I mean, one could take a longer-term perspective as well as a shorter-term perspective. I mean, the longer-term perspective, very clearly, the government needs to invest a lot in the IT infrastructure. We were just quoting those statistics, and absolutely right. And in fact, I would say those statistics are a little rosy. The actual facts are even worse, because if you sort of dig deeper into that statistic you just shared, and a very apt statistic, within that 50%, if you actually look at the households with students, that's an even smaller number. Apparently, that's only around 25%. That's pretty horrifying. So you've only got around 25% of that. So, effectively 25% of households with student population who've got the internet access, which is really not good at all. And then on top of that, if you overlay further statistics, like Power cuts, that's another 20% or so have consistent power cuts. Poor signal, that's another 35%. So net, of course, in numbers, it's easy to get deceived and feel everybody is doing good because it's a large country. So at the end, you look around you, everybody seems to be fine. But then when you go into the hinterland, particularly rural areas, that's where the real problems, as well as, of course, lower income people as well, households as well. So coming back to the question, therefore, as I was saying, on a long-term basis, there's no question that the government would really have to invest considerably in technology and IT infrastructure, making that internet available to everybody. And I think the good thing is it is happening. I mean, if you look at the statistic, even 3 years back, I think the internet penetration was only around 30%, and now it's come up to 50%, which is not too bad. It's quite rapidly, it's improving, so let's hope it keeps going in that direction. But there are also some short-term things, because the long-term is not going to address, students who can't access the classes on an everyday basis today. And there are a number of countries that are doing very many things, and some of which some states in India are doing, some state governments are doing, some better, some less so. So, for example, I think a number of states, including Kerala, where I'm currently on leave, for instance, what they do is they invest in it. So whatever is taught on the internet is also taught on TV. So the same thing is transmitted by a TV. So that makes it accessible. If you don't have internet access, you know what's being taught on that day, and you get access to that. Some other things that can be done, and there are a number of countries that are doing things like this, and I think some of this is happening again selectively in some parts of India, is community level internet access. So if you can't make it available at an individual level, you make it available at a community level, maybe villages or groups of people, community. So then people know that, okay, if you don't have internet in your home, you can go to that center, and then you can sort of attend your internet classes, your online classes there, and so on. Other things, obviously, sort of subsidized rates for low-income households, low-income students. And another thing, which in fact a number of African countries are doing, is they have partnerships, including with people like Google and so on, with the internet service providers to provide subsidized rates for students. So I think there's a lot more that can be done in that area. So you partner with them, and then potentially for the internet service providers, these students tomorrow are going to be income earning, and then that kind of, they become your lifelong customers. So there's a lot of scope in that area as well. And last but not least, I would say a number of governments are doing that, and I don't think it's happening to the extent one might want it to happen here, which is offer free Wi-Fi spots, sort of where you have these places where students know they can go there, and then they can, and this happens even in the UK, where I was for quite a bit of time before I moved here, where the government offers these Wi-Fi spots, and then the students can go there and they can sit there, do their study, attend their internet classes, and then go back to wherever they are living and so on. So I think that's again something which governments can easily do.
Thank you, sir. I think a lot of very interesting ideas, especially what you said about broadcasting the lessons on TV. I think that's really interesting. So on one hand, like you mentioned the digital divide, but on the others are kind of struggling with handling these new tools. Classes are happening on Zoom, exams are being given online, so they're not very savvy when it comes to handling these kind of tools. So I would like to ask Professor Pillai to tell us as to how do you think institutions, corporates, and the government, they can kind of come together and provide a solve for this problem?
Because during the last 1 year, we have seen how technology has transformed education. It was not a choice. Actually, it came as some sort of a compulsion. We cannot do without technology, and we are getting seasoned to that to some extent. But whether this seasoning to technology is really adding to education in the right sense, that is the question we have to ponder about. Of course, earlier experts mentioned about the digital divide and the non-uniform distribution of the facilities across the country. I am not going further into those details. But
Okay.
when it comes to education, it is for providing knowledge and skills. Knowledge and skills. And this knowledge and skills are for enhancing the quality of life and life management systems. Today, I am sitting in Kerala now. I am working in Bombay, I am sitting in Kerala now. Tomorrow, almost 10 lakh students are going, today, 10 lakh students are going to write the 10th standard examination. Almost around 8 lakhs for the 12th standard examination. So they are going to the examination up for 1 year, not even seeing the classroom and the teachers. They have not even seen it. They might have got some knowledge and skills, not doubt about it. But the knowledge and skills alone will not work in reaching the purpose of education. It is only the text of education. Knowledge and skills is only the text of education. And if only one understands the context of the knowledge and skills, the real application of the knowledge and skills will happen. And this contextual understanding of knowledge, the contextual acquisition of knowledge is being severely affected. The community feeling. And this context has a lot of other connotations also. Context is not just, context is determined not only just by the knowledge and skills. It has a cultural connotation, it has a sociological underpinnings, it has industrial context. So and this context varies from place to place, time to time. And this context of the knowledge and skills may be through the classrooms, of course, even through the physical classrooms. They had some way of understanding the knowledge and the context of the society through interaction with through their classmates, the teachers, the campus, the community, the travel, the mixing, of course, the trials, all this which are happening in the college campuses, classroom communities, university campus. This is really probably a problem. How to compensate this particular thing? How we can create that contextual understanding of the knowledge and skills? It's very important.
Sure, sir.
So probably they will, of course, the social relevance knowledge.
Right.
But examination side, lot of things they may knowledge not to that expectation is happening, and a contextual understanding of the knowledge and skills is rather difficult. And there, of course, the students might have got the technology, they might have learned the technology, but at the same time, the teachers, of course, teachers also by way of compulsion, they are also resorting to technology and then creating their own classes, whether it be Google Classroom or several kinds of classroom. All these things are happening. But teaching is different. Technology cannot teach. Only teachers can teach. So, but teachers have to be equipped with technology and the appropriate contextualized technology. And therefore, I am also teaching. Even now, I teach. So I have seen that there is a standardization, leveling, same level of teaching happening through technology, same level, and this level is spreading like anything. Earlier there were peaks and troughs in when teachers teach. For example, I may teach chemistry, my subject, in a one way, and my colleague in the same department will teach the same subject in a different perspective, and putting this perspective together is the way in which knowledge is expanding. And this is not happening. This leveling, this technological leveling is, to my understanding, to my assessment, it is a technological leveling down. Technological leveling down when it comes to the real purpose of education and contextual knowledge. Of course, there is no alternative. You have to just look at this thing. Of course, this is a transitory phase, but it is very important. So when it comes to the second point, when it comes to higher education, for example, national education policy, we are going to create several thousands of universities. Every college will be a university. By 2030, all colleges will be degree awarding and all that. That is the statement we have made in our trip. And then maybe 20% of that 20% of the institutions in higher education institutions in the country would be some sort of a research university. I am also a researcher, experimental researcher. So what has happened to experimental research during last 1 year? It is, very, very, very difficult because we have seen laboratories without students, equipments not utilized, higher level of research and experimental research, and definitely production and ground state, real hands-on experience with instruments and all that is severely lacking. Experimental research is suffering in a very big way. We cannot compensate laboratories with virtual laboratories forever. Virtual laboratories can be there, but virtual laboratories alone will not be there. And therefore, my suggestion, my thinking is that we have to live with this pandemic, and we are going to slowly overcome the situation. But at the same time, we have to find about. We have to think about. We have to be cautious about the leveling down through technology in our educational offerings. That is my point.
Yes, sir. That makes a lot.
Maybe I am not going to speak. I am not going to speak about how the statutory authorities, the regulatory authorities in the country's decision and our individual institutions' performance are out of disconnection. We talk about online education. You started saying with the economy of online education and all that. I was also just looking at it. So even now, of course, just 2 days ago, University Guidance Commission mentioned that 40% of education can be through MOOC and other open courseware. I was also heading a university, open university in the country, Indira Gandhi National Open University, the largest open university. But even today, with all these things, there is not even one full-time online degree offered by any university in the country. I'm making very specific. It is certificate, it is diploma, it may be 40%, it may be 30%, but there is not a full-time online degree. I'm not saying that it should be there. A first degree has to be always a regular degree along with technological support, but there has to be provision for the online degrees as well as regulations for supporting such things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Pillai. Lot of great points. Thank you so much, sir. Moving ahead, we took a lot of time discussing the problems. Let's move on to something more positive. So my next question is for Mr. Nihalwani. So if you can please tell us about Lenovo Smart Classroom Solutions and how they are tackling some of these big problems in education that we discussed right now. Mr. Nihalwani, can you hear us? You're on mute, sir.
Okay. Am I audible now?
Yeah, sorry. Please continue.
Thank you, Meghna. Lenovo Smart Solution cater to both in-class and remote learning and teaching. Though not all teachers and students are well equipped to handle the technology tools, but e-learning is a new normal and is going to stay for a long. Lenovo Smart Classroom uses intelligent tools to provide high-quality digitized content that reduce the burden of lesson preparation and enhance student interaction and communication. Easily track, manage, and monitor the education content through an effective learning management system Grading assignment become an easy and teachers get more visibility on students' performance, thus paving the path for student success. Hybrid learning, Lenovo combines in-class and distance learning with innovative tools such as the Think Smart Hub, interactive whiteboard, and other smart solutions. Artificial intelligence becomes effective teaching assistant that encourage learning beyond borders. The AI-powered English module, for example, a student learn a new language without supervision while also letting.
Mr. Nihalwani, I'm sorry to cut you off. Can you just speak up a bit, sir? Your audio is not very clear. So if you can please speak up a little bit, that would really help.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible, just your volume is a bit slow. So if you can speak up a little bit.
All right. So not sure whether where you lost me.
No, you can continue from where you left off. I'm so sorry for cutting you off.
All right.
You can continue. Yeah.
So I was referring the artificial intelligence become an effective teaching assistant that encourages learning beyond borders. The AI-powered English module, for example, let students learn a new language without supervision while also letting the teachers track in the process. That's it from my side.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay, so like you very pointed out right now about how Lenovo is kind of helping us chart this growth curve ahead and making sure that online education is available to everybody. The question on everybody's mind is also that are we actually going back to physical classroom are we looking at in the next couple of years? What's the future there? So I would like to ask Dr. Singh here to kind of tell us as to what his vision is when it comes to a new age classroom.
Well, we are going to have both modes now. If you look into new education policy, it envisages that our GR, graduate enrollment ratio, would be around 50%. And there is no possibility that existing colleges and universities can accommodate such population. So my guess is that out of the 50% students that we want to be in higher education system, at least 2/3 of them would be in offline mode and 1/3 of them would be online mode. Within offline mode, at least students would be taking 5 to 10% of their courses online. Now, what would change? That many things that we were not doing. For example, we wanted international faculty, and earlier it was very difficult. Now you can get international faculty. Earlier, we wanted people from industry to come and interact with the students. Now it is very much possible. Earlier, we were not giving many online assignments to students. Now it is very much possible. Earlier, students were not able to coordinate among themselves through online collaborative tools. Now it is very much possible. So we have learned a lot of things, and the boundaries between online and offline are going to divide. But as some of my colleagues were pointing out, that learning is a social process. Learning is a community process. So whether we are in offline mode or online mode, we must see that students have that social touch, community touch, because the students also learn from each other. So they are not just learning from the instructor. So we have to build in that element into the education. Another thing which I see that our ability to conduct experiments and simulations online was not very robust. Now various companies are developing games, online experiments and simulation, and that would add new dimension to learning, which is very welcome. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. Completely agree. Obviously, we will have a hybrid model where I think offline and online will both have hopefully equal importance. Mr. Nihalwani, if you can tell us about Lenovo Smart Solutions and how they cater to both in-class and remote learning, since the focus is on both for us. So please tell us how Lenovo is helping in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, the now voice is better.
Yeah, it's much better, sir. Thank you so
All
much.
right, all right. So technology is making a life easier and smarter. The very purpose of the technology is make the life more meaningful and future oriented. Smart classroom solution or hybrid learning solution has opened up a new learning platforms to enhance the student and teacher work ethics. Our solution help manage device, app, policies which are critical to the success of education. Example, managing inventory in BYOD environment. With the device dispersed through a school or through home, a central reporting system for devices is essential. Managing device inventory, location, time, last seen, operating system, assign user, and more. Managing apps. For most modern devices, apps are the gateway to content and instruction, ensuring simplified mass management of app licenses, self-service to provide apps, and over the air app delivery and revocations. Managing access, protect data, ensure passcode are in compliance with students' policies, as well as the ability to rest, lock, and wipe lost stolen devices over the year. Manage policy, different operating systems provide different native tools, ensure device remain secure, safe, and education focused by managing policies on what device features are not in use, logged and customized. Our aim is to meet these evolving needs of learning, covering comprehensive reporting, ensure student safety, reports for teachers and parents, web filtering, monitoring, and management across operating system, no matter where devices are located and learning takes place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nalwani. From what you mentioned, I think a very important point that we need to kind of talk about right away is cyber risk and threats. You talked about safety. I think that's one of the major concerns that both teachers, parents, and students as well are having right now. So I would like to turn to Dr. Kaushik here, and despite all the advantages of online learning that we have discussed so far, the aspect of security also kind of comes with a lot of question marks right now, which we have not been able to solve for. So, how do you think we can go about creating a safe and secure environment for everybody who's involved? Dr. Kaushik, if you can please tell us.
Connect-wise,
Sorry, sir, you're not audible.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's better, sir. Please go
I'm
on.
not visible, though it's not very necessary to be visible.
So,
Nevertheless,
I would request you if you can please switch on your camera. It
I was trying to take the help of my grandson, but unfortunately he has run away from here.
Okay, no problem, sir. Please continue. Please continue.
No, I belong to a social science stream, so fortunately I am surrounded by experts here. That is not much of a problem for me to delve in those areas which do not belong to me. One of the things that I find that, as Professor Rajasekharan also pointed out earlier, that education is not all that teaching, communication, expressing your views, carrying it to the classrooms, and all kind of clarification sought during that period. All these things are very important, and they are very important. In social science stream, fortunately, we have not been so badly hit in a relative sense, because most of the things have been done in classroom lectures, clarifications, doubts clarified further, different views invited from students, and if there are some doubts, clarified further. And that way technology has been a tremendous helpful factor to us. But then education is not all that clinical exercise. I remember I have been a student and a teacher of American affairs.
that Harvard once invited two experts to discuss some technology-oriented approach to history. And these two professors, Robert Fogel and Stanley Angerman, charged millions of dollars from Harvard to work out on the institution of slavery in the US, which was liberated in 1865 by the 13th and 14th Amendment, to be followed in 1868, but that apart. And their reading was, with the help of the computer and the digitization and various other kind of devices that they had at their disposal, that the institution of slavery in the South was not all that bad. The carbohydrate intake, the protein intake in their diet, sleeping space, care by the masters, plantation lords, so many other factors came as compared to a free labor in New York. So the institution was quite good. But then the traditional historians got worried about the whole thing. They have portrayed it in a very different way, and they said, what happens that when these slaves were lashed by the plantation lords, how many of them were asked to witness the scene? Maybe 300, maybe 200, maybe 3 or 4 people were lashed. The kind of trauma and the kind of depression, the kind of sense of neglect they felt could not be measured by the computer. So some of the serious issues emerged, that there are issues of depression, there are issues of emotion, there are issues of all kinds of psychological, psychosomatic nature, which cannot be measured by the machine. And therefore, to a certain extent, I think a balance between the two is necessary. Technology is extremely helpful in quantifying the data, coming to our rescue in various other ways also. Compressing books which carry about 400 to 500 pages in a limited one card position and enhance our knowledge. But to put it in a very clinical fashion may be a slightly wrong direction. That's how I feel. Thank you.
That's very true, Dr. Kaushik. I mean, in spite of all the advancements, we really can't forget the human touch. So, yes, completely agreed. Dr. Vijayakumar, my next question is for you, given that we are in such a volatile scenario and there's a lot happening in the e-learning space. So, what kind of technological trends do you see upcoming which you think will further disrupt the education sector?
I really do not know what is coming up, but I know the direction in which we are going, it will disrupt the education more and more, because we will get detached and we will become isolated, we will behave like islands, and we are not going to behave like a group or a team or a social animal. That is what I am worried, and that is what is happening now. And people in a lighter sense will all behave like IT professionals, talking to the computer, not talking to it. That is what is going to happen. And that is what is probably happening now. So the tool which is now coming up to help us may turn out to be the tool which will ultimately disrupt us also. That is how I am looking at. But having said that, there are so many interactive tools which may come up tomorrow where they can, as though we are in a classroom level, it may come. And that the IT professionals and people who are sitting in the technological side can help us understand that what now I am able to achieve, seeing the students in a classroom of 100 or 150 and be able to interact with them physically, that may happen tomorrow digitally as well. And that, if it happens, they need not come to see me, I need not see them at all. And that will be the disruption is what I feel. Thank you.
So let's hope, like you mentioned, that even if we are becoming robots, let's just hope that education is what gets prioritized at every step of the way. And for that to happen, I think we do need smart technology for all, which I believe is Lenovo's vision. So I would like to bring in Mr. Nihalwani here. If you can please tell us as to how Lenovo plans to execute this vision. What are your plans going ahead, and what is happening that we need to know about?
Smarter technology for all is about driving a real meaningful impact through technology. We believe smarter is a better way to describe the opportunity and power that technology has. It guides everything we do, the way we do it, and what it delivers. As a result, Lenovo is focused on a bold vision to deliver smarter technology for all by developing world-class changing technologies that create a more inclusive, trustworthy, and sustainable digital society for everyone, everywhere. I just want to showcase a customer experience enhancement with you. One of the top universities in India has selected Lenovo as an IT partner, and we have deployed 5,500 convertible notebooks. Working closely with the customer, we were able to identify the institution's IT challenges and provided a tailored solution through a Lenovo service Smart Fleet solution that guaranteed the full benefit of the device with the hassle-free experience. From deploying ready-to-use devices to a student, managing installation, site imaging, provisioning to having extended visibility and device control that help track and manage every student device remotely. That's how the technology can change uh, the current environment, and that's how the institutes are getting benefited from Lenovo.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nihalwani. I think, like you mentioned, new age technologies, I think that discussion will not be complete without us mentioning AR and VR. So I would like to turn to Dr. Kaushik to tell us as to what do you think is the importance of these technologies in changing the face of education? And if you can cite a few use cases for us so that we understand as to how educations are adopting these and what it means for them.
That question has been raised pertinently by my friends and colleagues. They're very distinguished people, they are seized of the problem. And I would imagine that in future, the direction that the technology gives us will be extremely necessary and useful even in the field of social sciences. In fact, much more in the field of social sciences. And I would imagine that the students should get accustomed more and more. Upskilled knowledge should be sort of extended to the student in their curriculum and their syllabi. Teachers may be oriented towards that direction to train the students to use and proper use and the methodology followed in the study of the social sciences through the technology. Many of the social science students are not aware of some of these methodologies which are prevalent in using the technology. I myself have been relatively ignorant, I must confess. And there is a slight mistake on the part of the organizer in putting me as the chairman of the IBM. I am not. I am chancellor of one of their universities. And you know how easy it is to get the chancellors, but how difficult it is to get good vice chancellors. So, in any case, I would simply say that curriculum and other kind of methodologies that are necessary in correcting the approach towards this technology and enhancing and upskilling the knowledge of social sciences through that methodology will be very helpful. And I think a lot of work is awaiting. Orientation, both part of the faculty as well as students, is necessary. No more these are the days of pure and simple narratives in sociology. There is a lot of analysis needed, a lot of critical thinking needed, and redemption from certain mistakes which we have committed and hastily drawn conclusions need to be corrected and need to be sort of updated properly. And students sometimes in the field of foreign policy, for instance, I'm talking about international relations, which has been my mainstay, we feel highly handicapped unless there is technology involved in it. When exactly the data was processed, how exactly it reached the policymakers, who twisted it further, how exactly it was manipulated, maneuvered, how the interpretations followed, all these things are technology oriented. So unless technology comes to our rescue, social scientists will at a loss in some ways. And I must say that there are a lot of technology-oriented approaches which have come up in our field also. I think future is extremely bright only if the technology can be of our rescue. Thank you.
Sure, sir. Completely agree. So while we are on the topic of technology, Mr. Nihalwani, I have to ask you the Smarter Education Solutions portfolio from Lenovo. In that, how do you see the AV technology being implemented?
So, AR VR is immersive educational experience. In a way, this novel tool teachers have, which excite the who have long relied on standard tools of learning to complement their lesson plan, textbook, PowerPoint presentations, educational videos, and so on. A unit of nutrition can be complemented by a VR field trip inside the digestive tract. A lesson on the sun, wearing VR headset, students are all in, immersed in the subject like never before. And studies have shown that immersion leads to engagement, which leads to knowledge retention. Using VR in classroom, the study found provides students with more engaging, authentic, empathic, and creative learning experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nihalwani. I think that's very important since we've talked so much about engagement of the students, how to make lessons more interactive for them. What you just mentioned, I think would be a very helpful tool in making sure those challenges get solved. We cannot also deny the importance of the government in kind of making sure where the education sector is headed, given the challenges that we have faced because of COVID. So I want to ask Professor Pillai as to how do you see smart solutions and devices strengthening the outcomes of the new education policy that we have had? Professor Pillai, can you hear us? You're on mute, sir. If you
Yeah.
please
Oh,
go.
okay. I heard you.
Yeah.
I heard your question. Of course, it is very important that the governments should react to respond to it positively. We can make a statement like that, but we have to be extremely proactive. Extremely proactive. We should find out the risk. For example, if you just look at the last 1 year, there has not been any significant appointment of teachers in the country. Any 1 year, I mean, of course, even now, I was also heading the University Grants Commission for some time. So, if you just look at the public universities, aided institutions in this country, right from school to university level, there is almost 40% teachers are teaching positions are vacant, even. So, technology, immersive classrooms, all these things are welcome. But this is for probably we need more teachers and more technology to enhance the quality of our teaching process and all that. It is not that the teacher has to be replaced. It is not that the physical buildings have to be destroyed. It is not that the libraries should not exist. When we thought about, of course, this internet and modern technology and all that, there was a lot of debate about disappearing of newspapers, disappearing of printed media, but nothing happened. Nothing happened. Actually, printed media and printed media strategies probably expanded and they have enriched themselves. And therefore, my thinking is that we should definitely look at maybe the definition of the teacher can be, the profile of the teacher can be different, but the teachers have to be, more and more teachers have to come into technology, they have to make use of technology. And as my colleagues mentioned, we have to enhance the gross enrollment ratio. Yeah, of course, we can enhance the enrollment ratio, but the gross enrollment ratio is not the real ultimate outcome. Gross success ratio, gross utility ratio. How many of our graduates who are coming out of the education institutions, they get a real feeling of education and all this. So technology only, I am emphasizing technology only will not probably help us. Probably along with technology, the human mind, the human consciousness, our community feeling, the social aspects of education, the pedagogy, individualist pedagogy, all these things are important. Robot can teach, but as I mentioned, for every teacher, there is an individualized pedagogy for teaching, and that is very important. That is why we have teachers and teachers, teachers and teachers. So you cannot just have one lesson prepared, and now with one lesson you can just teach the whole world. That should not be the case. The individual capability of the human mind should be there in the teaching, and therefore the real concept of universities. For example, when we are going to create university, the physical space of the university, the community space of the university, the cultural space of the university. When I mention university, any education institution, it has to be preserved. It should not. Maybe with technology, things are getting cheaper, and therefore we can just manage gross enrollment ratio just by technology. That is not going to serve the purpose. A university should be open to ideas, open to people, and open to places. That's the concept of a university itself. That is the openness of a university. It's not just, I'm not defining the open university. That's the concept of a university. All kinds of interactions. What is the disconnect? Maybe difference of opinion. All these things, dialogues, debates, all these things happen. Of course, through technology, now everything is happening. But you just look at a technological intervention in a particular dialogue or discourse, and a human, the human side of it, we can see a lot of difference. I think we should definitely preserve that. Any attempt to jeopardize that particular philosophical and cultural aspect of education, we have to be extremely careful. And therefore, we should definitely think about the capacity building of teachers. Capacity building of teachers at all levels, right from school education, right from the nursery and to the topmost research institution. We have to think about the capacity building through technology. For example, immersive classrooms. All these things, teachers should make use of it. And then, along with that technology, teachers should delve into new spheres of human activity, expanding of knowledge, but it is also the acquisition of knowledge and leveling up to that level. So that should also happen. So I fully advocate these things, but there has to be very consistent and very strong and very determined efforts from the regulatory authorities and the state governments and the central governments to see that the teacher and the teacher only can teach. They should be protected. That's my point.
Sure. Professor Pillai, completely agreed. Professor Subramanian, would you like to add anything on top of this about government policies that you feel should be implemented in making institutes to be more ready in embracing all these changes which are happening in the education sector?
Not specifically, because I think we've covered a number of things that the government could do from a technology point of view. But I think, as a number of our colleagues very rightly pointed out, it's not only about technology. That is a big part of the story, but then there is a bigger story than technology to making education really successful and sort of attaining the outcomes we want. And I think towards that end, things like the new education policy might help. I think will help if implemented. Implementation is key to a number of these things. So when you look at education, for that matter, I mean, this could be controversial, but you could argue potentially that in some ways, and as I said, it could be controversial, we have actually gone a little bit backward in comparison to some of our peer countries. I mean, going back 20, 30 years, India was Korea, Japan, they were up and coming countries, and we had some stellar institutes, national institutes, IITs, IIMs, and what have you, so we kind of were seen as leading the pack. Now that's changed. Now when you look at the subject-wise, you've got some, but then when you look at the overall universities, now we've only got, if you see the latest QS ranking, we've only got 3: IIT Bombay, IIT Delhi, Mumbai, Delhi, and Indian Institute of Science. So, and then the contrast, like China has now got something like 12 or 15 universities. Singapore has got 3. Japan, Korea, all of them have come up. So when you actually look at what they've done, I think in many ways there's some big difference, some takeouts you can see there. Many of them actually, when we were focusing mainly on higher education, they went about sort of focusing mainly on primary and secondary education. So at the time we were kind of ahead of the curve by focusing on higher education, but they went on to primary education, and we were in fact saying, we have faculty from here going and teaching in those countries, but what's happened is because they built the base, so now they've gone ahead once they because they had the base, and then on the foundation they could build the higher education institutions. But in our case, the base is still quite weak because we didn't focus adequately on primary and secondary and tertiary education, and we just had those islands of excellence, which is not enough for a large nation like us. I think so that's one of the things that really needs probably more tackling. The other thing is vocational education. I mean, you have countries like Germany, you have countries like, even today, if you go to Germany, for instance, MBA is, things like management education is very poorly regarded. I mean, they focus on higher education is, selective, only who want to go into academics to sort of pursue academics purely for its own sake. They go for, master's degree and so on. Otherwise, it's mostly vocational education. You don't be a really good electrician, you don't be a really good technician, plumber, what have you. Okay, and that is split with Japan, Australia. So there are kind of very different approaches to education, and they're very successful too. So I think there are takeouts there for us in terms of how could we be approaching education. So potentially, I would say, and some of that hopefully NEP will address. So when you look at it, also assessment methods. There is still, I think, a great focus on exams and so on. Whereas when you look at countries which have really progressed further down the ladder, the whole assessment method is, there's a much greater sort of, directionally they've moved away from exams. It's much more about, your learning skills in different areas, and assessments are very often a very small, exams are very often a very small component of assessments and so on. So at the end, I think again some of our colleagues touched upon this. The vast majority of students, they're not going on to study, attain Nobel Prizes. That's a small minority. The vast majority need to be prepared for life skills. That's what it's about. It's to attain the basic skills so you're successful in life. So I would say, to kind of sum up, if you really want to look at it, looking at other countries, looking at our own experience, how we are falling behind compared to some of the peer countries, I would say, makes the technology, of course, has come up in a big way, so make students ready for the new world, digital ready, tech savvy. Obviously, that remains important. Focus on STEM, technology, IT remains important, but equally, again, as some of our colleagues pointed out, focus more on the soft skills, preparing how are you ready for life skills, ready for society, practical skills, entrepreneurship, etc. And obviously more online education will be make it more of a level playing field, making it more sort of accessible to everybody, more continuing education opportunities. New education policies now talk about it again, implementation is key, more modular learning. If you take Singapore, for instance, I was just mentioning Singapore, there when you enroll in a university, you're enrolled for 20 years. That's the period of time you're enrolled for. Why? Because there's a recognition that learning is a lifelong process, and you can keep coming back and learning what you want to learn in a fast-changing world. So that's the kind of approach which I think will prepare people better for life. Modular learning and lifelong skills, continuing education opportunities, and as I said, I think a number of these things your NEP does talk about it. So hopefully we'll get there in time.
Thank you, sir. That's very rightly mentioned. I think the situation has really made us relook at the entire system. So here's hoping that with the help of technology and with the learnings that we have over time, we are able to kind of put India back on the map when it comes to education. So this was a fabulous discussion. Thanks to all of you for sharing your insights. I think a lot of great takeaways. I'm sure our audience also had a great time listening to the points that you all had to share. This is the end of today's session. So again, very glad that all of you could take time out for us and join us today. A big thank you to Lenovo India for powering this event. And we would like to sign off right now. So take care, stay well, and we'll be back soon with a more exciting discussion very soon. So stay tuned to this space. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.